Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. This week's questions answered video, what trigger do you use in your AR rifles? I'm somewhat boring when it comes to triggers. I do have some Geissele's, which are considered, arguably one of the best triggers out there that you can get. I have an SDC and an SSP. I like both of those triggers a lot. But my go-to usually falls back to the ALG, the ACT trigger. Now I do have the BCM, their PNT trigger. I like that, but the ALG consistently gives me the performance that I want. Usually the question comes down to single stage versus two stage, and the answer is yes. Single stage triggers are great. Like I said, I have some. I am a fan. Used CMC triggers in the past. I'm not a huge fan going forward of the drop-in trigger units, the self-contained little box units, because I shoot suppressed so often. I find that even with piston guns, but it's worse on DI guns, all that pressure coming back into the lower receiver gums those self-contained trigger units up really bad, or I should say quicker than I'm going to see the same problem on a traditional two-pin non-enclosed trigger unit, or trigger group rather. As far as single stage trigger goes, they are marginally faster. I noticed with my particular trigger speed, I'm not the fastest shooter in the world, but I am able to run a single stage a little bit faster. The problem with single stage for me arises when it comes to precision shooting. It's all or nothing, and this topic kind of addresses the video earlier in the week when we talked about trigger control in the AR. I really like the two stage because it gives me that wall, so I have that final decision, final fine-tuning adjustment. Whereas with a single stage, once I start that press, once I hit that wall, the round's going to break, and I don't have that final ability to make adjustments. So for intermediate range rifles, a single stage is fine for me, but I do prefer the two stage for further out. Like I said, the ALG, that ACT trigger is just awesome, especially considering the price. I had one, and now I have more than one. And as things go on, I'm looking at taking out some of those other triggers and non-precision guns and using the ALG for pretty much everything. Of course, the trigger isn't the solution for fundamental problems, just like any other piece of gear. However, it does make life easier once you understand the basics and once you've mastered the use of the trigger on the AR platform. One of the biggest problems, I guess, is there's so many circumspect triggers out there, the quote-unquote mil-spec trigger. Mil-spec triggers basically is the standard. Your trigger should be better than that because mil-spec is like the earliest acceptable degree of reliability. So that term gets thrown around a lot. I'm all about a mil-spec trigger. However, that's like the bottom base level of acceptable operation. I want a trigger that's going to function a little bit higher, and it's going to give me a cleaner press, a cleaner break, a cleaner reset throughout the trigger reset process, or trigger pull process, I should say. So for me, I guess the easiest way to answer that question is almost always I'm going with the ALG ACT for my AR platforms, unless it's a specific precision platform, because I am starting to get away from those single stage triggers, especially the self-enclosed units, like I said, because of suppressed fire just tends to cause them to have issues where they don't want to reset unless I'm on the gun really fast. So I'm taking single shots, I've got to literally get my finger behind it, my thumb behind the trigger and pull it out, or press it out just gingerly. So if I have to manually reset my trigger, that's a huge issue. If it happens once, could be a fluke. If it happens more than once, that trigger's coming out of the gun. I've cleaned them, put them back in, and then eventually had the same problem again, and I've had that problem on multiple different drop-in triggers. So it's an issue that I can't live with moving forward. I certainly hope that answers the question. If you have a question you'd like to see addressed in a questions answered video, feel free to drop it in the comment section below, and I'll see if I can get to it. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.